I always knew I was different from my sister, Olivia. While she was the life of every party, effortlessly charming and adored by everyone, I preferred solitude. My name is Cassie, and I never quite fit into my family's mold of what a daughter should be. Growing up, Olivia never let me forget how out of place I was. "Cassie, you're such a freak," she'd say, flipping her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. "Seriously, my friends think you're, insane. You spend all day in your room staring at that stupid screen." I would shrug and continue typing. The rhythmic clicking of my keyboard was far more comforting than her voice, or the fake giggles of her friends. While Olivia was busy organizing her next big social event, I was mastering Java, Python, and C++. It wasn't just a hobby, it was my future. My parents didn't understand my passion for coding, but they couldn't argue with my grades. "Cassie, honey," Mom would sigh from the doorway. "Wouldn't you rather go out and meet some friends instead of staring at that computer all day?" I'd nod absent-mindedly, already too deep in my work to explain, for the 100th time, that I was building a security system more advanced than most professionals. By the time I got accepted into a top university on a full scholarship for computer science, even Olivia had nothing to say. "Well, almost. At least you won't have to worry about guys distracting you there," she smirked. After graduation, I landed a job at a leading cybersecurity firm with a salary that most people my age could only dream of. But I kept quiet about it. If my family knew how much I made, they'd see dollar signs. Olivia would have her hand out, and my parents would guilt-trip me into helping her. So, I played it down, rented a modest apartment, and saved every penny toward my dream, a quiet house far from the city, where I could finally find peace. Then, one day, Olivia called. "Cassie," she squealed. "Guess what? I'm getting engaged. And yes, before you ask, you're invited." I blinked. "Congrats, Liv." "Who's the lucky guy?" "Ethan," she said, like I should already know. "The engagement party is next month at Bella Lux, so please, for the love of God, try to look normal. No t-shirts, no jeans, and for once in your life, wear some makeup." I sighed. "Got it." A week after that call, I made the mistake of visiting my parents. The second I walked in, I was hit with wedding madness bridal magazines everywhere, cake samples on the counter, and my parents looking far more stressed than they should be. "Cassie, you're here!" Mom barely glanced up from a seating chart. "Did Olivia tell you about the engagement?" "Yeah." I grabbed an apple from the counter. "How much is all this going to cost?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We're thinking about taking out a loan." I nearly choked. "A loan? For a wedding? Why not use that money for something practical, like a down payment on their first house?" Mom looked at me like I had just insulted the Pope. "Cassie, you just don't understand these things," she huffed. "Weddings are important. Every girl dreams of her perfect day." "Not every girl," I muttered. "That's exactly what I mean." Mom threw her hands up. "You have no idea what it's like to be a woman planning a wedding because you spend all your time with computers. When was the last time you even went on a date?" I clenched my jaw. There was no point in telling them about the guys I had dated, the ones who either couldn't handle that I earned more than them or expected me to drop my career once things got serious. Instead, I just shook my head. I just think going into debt for one day is ridiculous. "Well, nobody asked for your opinion," Olivia's voice cut in. I hadn't even noticed her enter the room. She crossed her arms. "Some of us actually care about making memories and having nice things." I turned to face her. "And some of us care about financial responsibility." "God, you are so boring," she groaned. "This is why you're still single, Cassie. You have no sense of romance. Probably in the same place as your common sense," I muttered. Mom shot me a warning look. "Cassie, if you're just going to be negative, maybe you should go home." I stared at them, realizing not for the first time that I didn't really belong in this family. "Maybe I should," I said, grabbing my keys. "Good luck with those loan applications." As I walked out, their excited wedding chatter filled the air again, like I had never been there at all. For the first time, I wondered if they'd even notice if I skipped the engagement party. But deep down, I already knew the answer. They wouldn't. The month flew by faster than I expected. I had debated skipping Olivia's engagement party, but I knew if I didn't show up, I'd never hear the end of it. So I made an effort, or at least an effort by my standards. I bought a navy blue dress that cost more than my entire wardrobe combined, and I even went to a salon, letting a professional tame my usually unruly hair. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Let's get this over with. Bella Lux was one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. The second my taxi pulled up, I could already tell this was no small gathering. The entire venue had been rented out, and the entrance was lined with white roses and twinkling lights. I sighed, stepping out of the car, already regretting this. Inside, the scene was exactly what I had expected: extravagant, over the top, and filled with people pretending they were in a movie. Olivia's college friends were huddled near the bar, giggling and taking selfies. Ethan's family, dressed in designer suits and dresses, occupied the best tables up front. My parents? They were working the room, smiling and introducing people like they were hosting a political fundraiser. I scanned the venue, looking for my seat. Family should be sitting together, right? But as I checked each table, my name was nowhere near my parents or Olivia. I frowned, moving farther back, and then I saw it. A table shoved into the farthest, dimmest corner of the room. One chair. One place setting. My name on a card. For a moment, I just stared at it. My chest tightened. I shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow, this hit harder than I expected. I turned, marching straight toward Olivia. She was surrounded by her bridesmaids, all of them gushing over her engagement ring. "Olivia," I said, forcing a smile. "Can we talk?" She barely spared me a glance. "Oh my God, Cassie, not now." "Yes, now," she groaned, waving off her friends and dragging me to the side. "What is it?" I crossed my arms. "Why did you put me at a table by myself? In the freaking shadows?" She scoffed. "Oh, get over yourself. Did you expect a VIP seat? My friends think you're weird, and Ethan's family doesn't need to be subjected to your awkwardness." My jaw clenched. "So, you're ashamed of me?" She rolled her eyes. "You are a bit of an embarrassment, Cassie. You don't fit in. You never have." I felt like I had been slapped. Before I could say anything, our mother appeared at Olivia's side, her smile instantly fading when she saw my expression. "What's going on here?" I swallowed hard. "Mom, Olivia just called me an embarrassment." She sighed, glancing at my sister. "Olivia, don't be rude." Then she turned back to me. "Cassie, just go sit at your table and don't make a scene." "This is your sister's big day." I looked between them. My mother, my sister. They knew what they were doing. And they didn't care. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for a seat at their perfect little table. I just turned and walked away. I sat at that lonely table for exactly 30 minutes, watching as Olivia and Ethan made their big announcement, watching as my parents beamed with pride, watching as everyone else in the room celebrated, laughed, and enjoyed themselves while I sat in the shadows. Then, I had enough. I grabbed my purse, stood up, and walked straight out the door. No one stopped me. No one even noticed. The taxi ride home was a blur. The moment I stepped into my apartment, I kicked off the expensive heels that had been killing my feet and changed into my usual jeans and t-shirt. The version of me that Olivia despised. The version of me that I actually liked. And then, I did what I always did when I needed to process my emotions. I started coding. Hours turned into days, days into weeks. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects, earning substantial bonuses. While my family's obsession with Olivia's wedding grew, my contact with them shrank to nothing. No calls, no texts, nothing. And honestly, it was a relief. That's when I realized I didn't have to wait anymore. I had more than enough saved. I called a realtor. "Hi, I'm looking to buy a house. Something private, quiet. No nosy neighbors." Lisa, my realtor, laughed. "I think I know just the place." She was right. The house was perfect. A modern, secluded home with a wraparound porch, surrounded by nature. The previous owners had already set up high-speed internet, and the home office had massive windows overlooking a small pond. "I'll take it," I said, without hesitation. The mortgage process was smooth. Within weeks, I was a homeowner. I told exactly 2 people, my best friend from college and my team lead at work. My family didn't need to know. They had lost that privilege when they shoved me into the corner at that party. I moved in gradually, setting up my home office first, then furnishing the rest of the house room by room. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. No drama, no judgment, just me, my work, and my future. But peace? It turned out to be a luxury my family wouldn't let me enjoy for long. 2 weeks after settling into my new home, my phone lit up with my mother's number. "Cassie, we need to talk." I should have asked why. I should have known better. But instead, I agreed to go over. I walked straight into an ambush. The moment I stepped into my parents' living room, I felt it. Something was off. My parents and Olivia sat like a panel of judges, faces stern, eyes locked on me. I sat down, my brain already running through possible reasons for this family tribunal. My sister leaned forward, smirking. "So, Cassie, when were you planning to tell us about your house?" My stomach dropped. "How did you?" Then it hit me. "Lisa, my realtor Lisa." Olivia grinned. "Bingo. She's a friend of a friend." Mom crossed her arms. "We know everything, Cassie. We know how much you make. We know about your bonuses. You've been lying to us." My pulse pounded. "I haven't lied about anything. I just didn't feel the need to tell you my financial business." "Same thing," Olivia snapped. "You've been holding out on us while pretending you couldn't help." I let out a bitter laugh. "When exactly should I have told you? At my lonely corner table during your engagement party?" Dad finally spoke. "Cassie, the point is, we're struggling to pay for Olivia's wedding, and you've never offered to help." I stared at them. "You took out a loan. That was your choice." Mom waved a dismissive hand. "Cassie, we're family. We help each other." Then Olivia smiled. A slow, smug smile. "So," she said, her voice sickly sweet, "since you can afford a house, you can pay for my wedding." I felt a laugh bubble up, but not the happy kind. The kind that comes when something is so absurd, you either laugh or scream. I chose to laugh. Olivia's words hung in the air like a bad smell. "Since you can afford a house, you can pay for my wedding." I laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real, full-bodied, "are you kidding me" kind of laugh. Olivia's smug expression faltered. "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "Oh, Olivia," I said, wiping away an imaginary tear. "It's hilarious." Mom gasped. "Cassie, don't be cruel." I turned to her, still smiling. "Cruel?" "Mom." Olivia shoved me in a corner at her engagement party, like I was some unwanted distant cousin. "You both ignored me for weeks. And now, you suddenly remember I exist because you need money?" Dad sighed. "Cassie, we're not saying, 'Cut the crap, Dad,'" I interrupted. "That's exactly what you're saying." Olivia crossed her arms. "You're being so selfish. I'm your sister. Family helps family." I leaned forward, mirroring her smug posture. "That's funny because when I asked why I was seated alone at your engagement party, your exact words were, 'You don't fit in, and I'm embarrassed by you.' But now, suddenly, I'm good enough to fund your dream wedding?" Silence. Dad cleared his throat. "Cassie, it's not just about Olivia. Your mother and I have done so much for you. We raised you, put a roof over your head, made sacrifices." I scoffed. "Oh, please." Olivia got a brand new car for her graduation. I had to buy my first car with my own savings from tutoring. Olivia got her college tuition partially paid for. I had to apply for scholarships. If anyone made sacrifices, it was me. Mom's jaw clenched. "That's not fair." "What's not fair is expecting me to fix your financial mistakes." I shot back. Olivia slammed her hands on the table. "I deserve a beautiful wedding, Cassie. That did it." I stood up, grabbing my bag. "And I deserve respect. But neither of us is getting what we want, are we?" Mom reached out. "Cassie, please." "No," I snapped. "I am done being treated like an ATM. You made your choices. Live with them." I walked out. No one followed me. That was the last time I saw them for a while. For a few days, I let it go. I focused on work, on my new home, on finally having peace. But then the messages started. First, a passive-aggressive text from Mom. "Mom, Cassie, I can't believe you would turn your back on your own family. We're struggling, and all we asked for was a little help. What happened to the girl we raised?" Then came the relatives. "Aunt Karen, your mother is heartbroken. How could you do this to her? Cousin Josh, wow, Cass. Didn't think you were such a greedy beetish. Great Aunt Linda, family always comes first, dear. You should be ashamed. Even people I barely knew chimed in. Olivia had clearly been busy spinning her version of the story, painting me as the evil sister who abandoned her struggling family. I had two choices: ignore it and let them trash my name. Set the record straight. Guess which one I picked? I opened my social media and started typing. Since there seems to be a lot of confusion about recent family events, let me clarify. At my sister's engagement party, I was seated alone at a table in the farthest corner of the venue, away from the rest of my family. When I asked why, I was told I was an embarrassment. Weeks later, the same sister who was ashamed of me suddenly remembered I exist because she wanted me to pay for her wedding. When I refused, I became the villain. Funny how that works. To the relatives messaging me about family duty, where was that concern when I was being treated like an outcast? Family isn't about blood. It's about respect. And I'm done being part of a family that only values me when I have something to give. I hit post, and oh boy did it blow up. Olivia got what she deserved. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. It didn't take long before people found Olivia's social media. And just like that, the tide turned. Olivia's Instagram, normally filled with post, selfies, and wedding updates, was flooded with comments. So you bullied your sister and still expected her to fund your lifestyle? Kinda ironic that the embarrassment is the only one financially stable. Girl, no one likes a gold digger. She tried turning off comments. Didn't help. Then Mom called. I let it ring. Then Olivia tried, declined, then Dad, blocked. They wanted me silent. They wanted me to play the role of the obedient, quiet daughter who put up with being mistreated. But I wasn't that girl anymore. 3 days later, there was aggressive knocking at my front door. I checked my security cameras. Mom, Dad. I sighed, pressing the intercom. Go home. Mom's voice cracked through the speaker. Cassie, please. We just want to talk. Now you do? I scoffed. Where was this energy when Olivia shoved me in a corner? Dad ran a hand down his face. Cassie, we need to fix this. Olivia's getting harassed online. I smirked. Ah, so you don't care about how I was treated. You just care that people found out. Olivia stomped her foot. You ruined my reputation. I raised an eyebrow. No, Olivia, you did that. They argued for another hour outside my house. I ignored them. Eventually, they left, but I knew this wasn't over. For the first time in my life, I held all the power. I wasn't the forgotten sister, the family embarrassment, or the quiet pushover anymore. I was the woman who stood her ground, and they hated it. After my family's little visit, things went quiet for a few days. No calls, no texts, just silence. Then, the damage control started. Mom posted a long, dramatic Facebook status about the importance of family unity and how some people forget their roots when they taste a little success. It was vague enough not to mention me by name, but everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. The comments were a mix of sympathy and brutal honesty. Aunt Lisa, oh honey, I hope things work out. Cousin Taylor, or maybe you should have treated her better? Just a thought. Random coworker of Mom's. Is this about that viral post? Because whew, that was messy. I laughed. So much for Mom's perfect image. Olivia, meanwhile, had gone radio silent on social media. No wedding updates, no selfies, nothing. She tried to ride out the storm, but her carefully curated image had already cracked. Then, one morning, I got an email. Subject, let's move past this from Olivia Cassie. I think we both overreacted. I was stressed, and I said things I shouldn't have. You hurt me too, you know? That post humiliated me in front of everyone. You made me look like a monster. I want to fix this. Let's put the past behind us. We're family. That's what matters. Also, Mom and Dad still expect you to contribute to the wedding. It's not too late to do the right thing. I reread the last line 3 times, just to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. This girl really just tried to guilt trip me and ask for money in the same breath. I took a deep sip of my coffee, cracked my knuckles, and typed out my response. Subject let's move past this from Cassie. Olivia, I didn't make you look like a monster. You did that all on your own. Funny how you only care about family when you need something. I don't owe you, Mom or Dad, anything. Not my money, not my time, not my silence. Good luck with your wedding. I won't be there. I hit send and felt nothing but relief. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Olivia declined. Then mom blocked. Then dad. Straight to voicemail. I meant what I said. Without my family's drama sucking up my energy, life felt lighter. I finally finished setting up my home office, complete with dual monitors, a brand new ergonomic chair, and the fastest internet money could buy. My job? Thriving? My mental health? Better than ever. I woke up without stress. I worked without interruptions. I lived without guilt. Then, one afternoon, my best friend Maya called. "Dude," she said, barely containing her laughter. "Did you see Olivia's latest Instagram post?" I hadn't. I'd muted her account after the whole wedding fiasco. Maya sent me a screenshot. Olivia, in her best pity me voice, "Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst." Hashtag family eyes complicated. The comment section was brutal. Maybe if you didn't treat people like garbage, they'd still be around. Girl, your sister dodged a bullet. What happened to Cassie is an embarrassment. Oh, right, she stopped being useful. I shook my head, setting my phone down. Olivia had spent years acting like she was untouchable. Now she was learning what it felt like to be on the other side. Not my problem. A week before Olivia's wedding, I got another email. This time, from Dad. Subject: one last chance from Dad. "Cassie, your mother and I are very disappointed. We've always been there for you, and this is how you repay us? Your sister is heartbroken. The least you could do is show up and be part of the family again. We won't ask for money anymore. Just be there. Let's fix this before it's too late." I sighed, staring at the screen. This wasn't an apology. It was a last-ditch attempt to get me back under control, and I wasn't falling for it. Subject: one last chance from Cassie Dad. I spent my entire life being treated like an outsider in this family. You only ever noticed me when you needed something. I don't owe Olivia a wedding gift, a speech, or even my presence. I wish you all the best, but I'm done. Send. I never heard back. The wedding happened. Without me. I only knew because my aunt, who always loved stirring the pot, sent me a text with pictures. It was exactly what I expected. Over the top, expensive, flashy, but I noticed something. A lone table in the farthest corner of the venue. One chair, one place setting. This time, someone else had been shoved into the shadows. Makes you think, huh? Olivia got her wedding. My parents got their debt. And me? I got peace. I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. I stopped hoping my family would suddenly see me. Instead, I built a life that made me happy. And the best part? I didn't owe a damn thing to anyone who didn't deserve it. After Olivia's wedding, the silence from my family stretched on. No texts, no calls, no desperate emails, just nothing. And I was fine with that. I spent my mornings drinking coffee on my porch, enjoying the quiet. I threw myself into work, took on exciting projects, and even started mentoring young programmers. My house felt like home now, a place where I could exist without judgment, without pressure, without feeling like an outsider in my own life. But peace? Peace never lasts. One evening, as I was finishing up a late-night coding session, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. Hello? A familiar voice sighed on the other end. Cassie, it's Dad. My stomach clenched. What do you want? A pause. Then, we need to talk. It's important. I considered hanging up, but something in his tone, something tired, made me hesitate. Fine, I said. Talk. Dad cleared his throat. It's about your mother. I leaned back in my chair. What about her? Another sigh. She's not doing well. She's stressed, Cassie. The wedding expenses were a lot, and things haven't been easy. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Dad, if you're calling to guilt me into helping with the loan payments, don't waste your breath. No, he said quickly. That's not it. I stayed silent, waiting. He hesitated before continuing. The truth is, we're struggling. Your mom's been trying to keep up appearances, but the wedding wiped out our savings. The loan payments are crushing us. And Olivia, he trailed off like he didn't want to finish the sentence. What about Olivia? I pressed. Dad sighed. She's barely speaking to us. She's been acting different. She and Ethan are already having problems. I wasn't surprised. Olivia had spent her whole life obsessed with image, with perfection. But marriage wasn't a carefully curated Instagram post. It was work. And Olivia? She had never been good at work. That's not my problem, I said. She made her choices. So did you and Mom. I know, he admitted. But Cassie, we miss you. I closed my eyes, letting out a slow breath. You miss needing me, I corrected. There's a difference. Dad didn't argue, because he knew I was right. I should have left it at that. I should have hung up, let them deal with their mess, and moved on. But some stupid part of me, the part that still remembered being a kid who just wanted to belong, felt something close to pity. So the next afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. The place looked the same. The lawn was still perfectly trimmed. The welcome mat still sat at the front door, as if it actually meant something. But when Mom opened the door, she looked smaller. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled. The usual spark in her eyes was gone. She just looked tired. Cassie, she breathed, like she couldn't believe I was real. I shifted awkwardly. Hey, Mom. She stepped aside, letting me in. The house was quieter than I remembered. No wedding magazines, no Olivia throwing dramatic fits, just quiet. We sat in the living room. Dad was already there, looking just as exhausted. For the first time in years, they looked like people instead of characters in the perfect family script they had tried to sell the world. I leaned back in my chair. So, talk? Mom exhaled sharply. I don't know where things went wrong. I let out a dry laugh. Seriously? She flinched, but I wasn't going to let her rewrite history. You want to know where things went wrong? I asked. Maybe when you let Olivia treat me like garbage my whole life. Maybe when you shoved me into the shadows at her engagement party. Or maybe when you only acknowledged me when you needed money. Mom's eyes welled up with tears. Cassie, we didn't mean to, but you did, I cut in. And you never cared until it backfired. She wiped her eyes. I just thought, one day you'd understand. That you'd forgive us. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Forgiveness isn't something you just get, Mom. It's earned. Dad cleared his throat. We're not asking for money. We just want a chance to fix things. I studied them. For the first time, I saw cracks in their armor. Real regret. Real uncertainty. But was it enough? Could they ever really change? I didn't know. What I did know was that I wasn't the same girl who had begged for their approval. I didn't need them anymore. I stood up, grabbing my bag. Mom looked up, panicked. Cassie, I held up a hand. I'm not saying we can't ever talk again, but I'm not just going to fall back into place like nothing happened. She swallowed hard. Then what do we do? I met her gaze. You start by proving you actually care about me. Not my money, not what I can do for Olivia. Me. Dad nodded slowly. That's fair, I nodded back. Good. Then I turned and walked out. This time, when I left, it wasn't out of anger. It wasn't out of hurt. It was my choice. And that was the most powerful thing of all. Weeks passed. My parents didn't bombard me with calls. Olivia didn't try to guilt trip me. It was strange. For the first time in my life, I wasn't tangled in their mess. And it felt good. One night, I got a text from Mom. Mom, I know I've made mistakes. I'm trying to be better. Just wanted to say I love you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, finally, I typed back. Me, okay. No promises. No grand declarations. Just, okay. Because change didn't happen overnight. But for the first time, I was willing to see if it could happen at all. And if it didn't, well, I had already built a life where I didn't need them to be okay. And that was enough. Weeks passed, then months. And for the first time in my life, my family wasn't at the center of my thoughts. No constant tension, no waiting for the next guilt trip, no exhausting need to defend myself. I had finally stepped away from the chaos, and I wasn't looking back. One evening, I was curled up on my couch, sipping tea and scrolling through my phone, when a text popped up from Maya. Maya girl, Olivia just went full meltdown on Facebook. You need to see this. I sighed, already knowing this was going to be ridiculous. Maya sent a screenshot. Olivia's Facebook post, sometimes people you love turn their backs on you. Sometimes the ones who are supposed to support you are the first to abandon you. Betrayal hurts more when it comes from family, but that's okay, because in the end, I know I'm the better person. I have my husband, my beautiful home, and a life full of love, and I refuse to let jealousy bring me down. Hashtag moving on, hashtag blessed. I nearly choked on my tea. Jealousy? I muttered to myself. She really thinks I'm jealous? I wasn't the only one who found it laughable. The comments section was a battlefield. Cousin Taylor, jealous? Of what? Debt and a husband you barely tolerate? Ex-bridesmaid Megan, girl, please. Your beautiful home is your in-law's basement. Random high school friend. Cassie's living her best life while you're on here playing victim. Let it go. I grinned. For once, I didn't have to say a damn thing, unlike Olivia Mom was trying. Not in a grand, dramatic way. Not with tearful apologies or big gestures. Just small things. A text every now and then. Mom, hope you're doing well. Thinking of you today. Mom, I saw a news article about cybersecurity and thought of you. It's amazing what you do. Mom, no pressure, but I'd love to see you sometime. No, Olivia, just us. I didn't always respond. Sometimes I just wasn't ready, but I noticed. And maybe, just maybe, she was actually learning. One afternoon, I was deep in work when my email pinged. Subject, a seat at the table from Lisa, my realtor, the one who accidentally outed my home purchase to Olivia. I raised an eyebrow and clicked. Hey, Cassie, I know this is random, but I wanted to reach out. I have a client, Emma, who's getting married soon. Her family isn't supportive, and she doesn't have many people in her corner. She told me about how her parents are ashamed of her for choosing her own path, and it reminded me of what you went through. She asked if I knew anyone who might want to come to the wedding. Someone who gets it. No pressure, but I think you'd like her, and I think she'd like to know she's not alone. I sat back, rereading the email. It wasn't a family obligation. It wasn't someone demanding I show up for their big day. It was an invitation, a real one. Not because I was useful, not because I had money, just because someone thought I belonged. I stared out my window for a long time, thinking, for years I had chased a family that never really saw me. I had fought to be included, to be valued. And when I walked away, I thought that meant I was alone, but I wasn't. Because family wasn't just the people you were born to. It was the ones who chose you, the ones who made space for you, not out of guilt or obligation, but because they wanted you there. I clicked reply. Me? Tell Emma she can count me in? And just like that, I had a seat at the table. One I actually wanted. One I actually deserved. Story 2. As the Wilson family's second daughter, I had to live in Jessica's shadow growing up. Our parents said she was flawless in every aspect, and she was 5 years older. I was taught this lesson at a young age, and it was repeated every day in both significant and minor ways. I was thrilled to show my parents when I received an A on my arithmetic test when I was 6 years old. They were admiring Jessica's new dancing move as they were in the kitchen. That's lovely, honey. Without even glancing at my work, Mom said. However, see your sister's pirouette. I silently made my way to my room after standing there with my test, till the paper became limp in my palms. The pattern remained constant. I got her hand-me-downs, while Jessica got new things from the mall. They got her the newest iPhone when she requested a phone at the age of 12. I was told to be thankful when I received Jessica's old flip phone on my 12th birthday. Your sister is making great strides. Every time I ventured to grumble, Dad would say, these items are essential to her future. My future didn't seem to require much investment. The same material was used to make our paternal grandparents, who had a swimming pool and a well-kept yard in the upscale area of town. Grandma Margaret would give Jessica huge hugs and enthusiastic squeals whenever we went to visit. While I would get a distracted pat on the head, she would exclaim, "Oh, Robin," as if she had just realized I was there. "You've matured." It truly hit home for me the Christmas I was 8 years old. Jessica opened a brand new laptop that she needed for her coursework. I received several pencils and a bag of notebooks. With his patronizing grin, Richard said, "We're being practical, Grandpa. Isn't this more to your speed?" However, I had a haven of my own, the home of my mother's parents. On the opposite side of town, Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George resided in a simple ranch-style house. Something wonderful occurred there. They treated me as if I were important. When I spoke, they would genuinely pay attention. They put my artwork next to Jessica's on their refrigerator. They prepared my favorite meals after remembering me. When I went there, Jessica detested going there. It's really dull. She would gripe. They have no pool at all. Furthermore, Grandma Eleanor never lets me pick what TV shows we watch. She stopped coming, so I had them all to myself as our parents rushed Jessica to her never-ending schedule of ballet classes, horseback riding, violin lessons, and more. 3 weeks later, she would give up. Eleanor and George's was where I spent my afternoons. They helped me with my homework, showed me how to bake cookies, and never once made comparisons between me and my sister. My parents made the ultimate decision on my value to the family when I was 10 years old. Although it seemed more like a trial where the sentencing had been determined long before the proceedings started, it happened during what they termed a family meeting. It was an October Sunday afternoon. Every one of the 6 grown-ups took a position in our living room. Standing beside the fireplace are Mom and Dad. On the matching couches are both sets of grandparents. Additionally, Jessica and I sat on chairs that were brought in from the dining area. The air was thick with artificial significance. We have to talk about something important. With his hands clenched behind his back like a businessman announcing layoffs, Dad started. As you are aware, the cost of a college education is not decreasing. I saw Jessica brush her flawless blonde hair as she sat up straight in her chair. She began rehearsing for her future college student posts at the age of 15. I already knew where this was headed, so I sat still with my hands folded in my lap. Since the birth of the girls, we have been saving, Mom went on, her gaze straying to Jessica. However, we can only afford to send one of them to college, given the state of the economy. The ensuing silence wasn't actually a pause. It was only for theatrical effect, similar to how TV shows create tension before revealing the clear winner. Dad said that Jessica will be attending college in 3 years. She has demonstrated exceptional skill in a wide range of fields. We must encourage her to reach her full potential. He then faced me. His face was a mixture of contempt and phony pity. Robin, you're unique, my dear. You are more equipped for hands-on work. College isn't actually necessary for you. Dad's mother, Grandma Margaret, gave a hearty nod. She said, Jessica is so gifted. She possessed innate elegance, according to her dad's teacher only last week. She must have the greatest education available. With every syllable, I felt smaller as I sat there. Not enough gifted. Not worth the money. Not as unique as Jessica. The well-known statement has now been formally sealed and stamped. Then, however, an unforeseen event occurred. Grandpa George got to his feet. Anger flushed his face. This is completely unjust, he said. You have no right to dismiss a 10-year-old youngster in this manner. My father began George, but he was interrupted by Grandma Eleanor. If you refuse to provide equitable support to both of your daughters, her voice was as harsh as ice as she spoke. After that, we'll cover Robin's college expenses on our own. I saw my maternal grandparents get to their feet as a unified front. At college, Robin will have her opportunity. Grandma Eleanor made a statement. We will ensure that. Then they left in a startled hush as they left. I heard my parents conversing in their bedroom later that evening as I was making my way to the kitchen for water. Their statements were readily heard in the corridor via the heating vent. Mom is being absurd. Robin isn't college material, Mom said. In ordinary classes, she can hardly keep up. Instead, they ought to use that money to fund Jessica's education. Robin would not use it. She simply lacks intelligence, Dad concurred. Why they're pushing this is beyond me. Their comments swept over me like a familiar, harsh rain as I stood there in the dimly lit corridor. However, for some reason, it didn't hurt as much as it ought to have. Perhaps because I had already heard it all. Or perhaps because Grandma Eleanor's ferocious vow was still reverberating in my mind. As the years went by, I completed high school and Jessica enrolled in a pricey private university. My parents were always telling everyone about Jessica's fantastic college experience, her stellar grades, and her promising future, and they never missed an opportunity to boast about their ideal daughter. I spent much of my time at Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George's place, concentrating on my own studies. Their silent encouragement meant more to me than all of my parents' exclamations of admiration for Jessica ever could. Then the day arrived, shattering my parents' idyllic picture of their golden kid. When Jessica returned home from college, just after graduating, I was in my final year. She rushed in the front door with mascara streaming down her cheeks while I was working on my schoolwork at the kitchen table. "Father, mother," she cried. "I'm expecting a child." The ensuing hush was deafening. Mom spilled her coffee mug on the kitchen floor, causing the black liquid to spread. "Who is the father?" When Dad did inquire, it was little more than a whisper. Mom fell into a chair at the next thing Jessica said. "I'm not really sure. Everything took my parents less than 5 minutes to rebuild their ideal world, but I saw their expressions as everything fell apart." "Oh, dear." Mom hurried to give Jessica a hug. "These things don't happen because of you. We will assist you in raising the child." Dad hurriedly added, "You'll remain with us here." What I was hearing was unbelievable. "Are you serious?" From where I sat at the table, I said, "You're still making excuses for her after she gets pregnant, parties her way through college, and doesn't even know who the father is." Mom said, "Robin." "No, pay attention," I said. Finally, years of frustration boiled over. This is the result of spoiling someone for the rest of their life without ever holding them accountable. When you dare, Dad roared. "You're being unkind to your sister during a trying moment." Mom put her protecting arms around Jessica. She started crying again. "Leave now!" she yelled at me. "You're a cruel little person." I heard the rest right away. I hurried upstairs, packed a few clothing in a suitcase, and left. I could hear them reassuring Jessica behind me that everything would be well, that she had nothing to do with this. Without hesitation, Grandpa George and Grandma Eleanor took me in. Living with them, I completed my senior year while concentrating on my college applications. My parents didn't even attend my graduation. They didn't phone to see how I was doing. My real family was there, though. When I accepted my degree, my grandparents were beaming with delight. I moved to a different city for college that fall. My grandparents fulfilled their pledge to pay my college years ago. Rumor had it that Jessica had moved in with our parents after giving birth to a daughter. Most likely, they continued to justify her and treat her as if she were their ideal child, incapable of any wrongdoing. Jessica had a bright future, but life has a way of sorting itself out. I had graduated with honors from college and was doing well. I was hired by one of the city's leading consulting firms. I rose to the position of senior consultant in 6 years, gained the respect of my peers, and even succeeded in purchasing my own apartment. My schedule consisted of regular video conversations with Grandma and Grandpa George, weekend breakfasts with pals, and cozy, demanding work throughout the week. I only wanted their pride in my accomplishments to be validated by my family. Then my phone rang on a typical Tuesday morning. When I saw Mom, a number I hadn't seen in over 10 years, flash across the screen, I nearly spilled my coffee. "Robin." Her voice sounded worn out and older. "We need your assistance." I was still trying to comprehend what she had told me when I sat in my office 20 minutes later. After leaving her 9-year-old daughter behind, Jessica fled once more, this time with a man she had met at a pub. I'd never met the niece. Mom had begged him to come home. "We have to talk about this face to face." So that night, I ended myself heading back to my old home. The paint surrounding the windows was chipping, and the home appeared smaller than I recalled. Mom and Dad were older than I thought they would be. Dad's hair is now all gray. Mom's worried face was lined. I was shown to the living room by them. It was the same room where they had previously said I wasn't worthy of attending college. I didn't miss the irony. Jessica has exhibited instability. Dad's gaze shifted to his hands. She was never employed for more than a few months at a time. Different apartments, different men. This is where she always ended up. Mom dabbed at her eyes. We made an effort to assist her, monitored Lucy while she worked, paid off her bills, or said she was employed. However, she met this dude last week, claimed to be taking her to California so she could pursue a career in acting. Bitterly, she laughed. She departed after packing a suitcase, didn't even bid Lucy farewell. Our debt is engulfing us. Dad's voice cracked as he acknowledged personal loans and credit cards were used to keep Jessica afloat. I watched them writhe uneasily on the couch, which had turned from cream to dirty beige. As I waited for the others, "Lucy should be taken, please." At last, Mom said, "Adopt her. You're stable, actually. Accomplished. You might provide a wonderful life for her. This is too old for us. With a child, we can't start over. I sat in disbelief. These individuals, who had dismissed me as useless and had not even attended my graduation, were now requesting that I assume responsibility for a kid I had never met a child they had assisted in raising for 9 years, while allowing Jessica's chaos to continue. That evening, Lucy and I sat in the kitchen after my parents had gone to bed. She was not at all what I had anticipated. Not at all like Jessica. Lucy had been calm and contemplative, with serious brown eyes and a soft smile, whereas my sister had been boisterous and demanding. "Do you enjoy reading?" A heated copy of Harry Potter was on the kitchen counter when I inquired. "I adore it," she replied quietly. Grandma, however, believes I read too much. Instead, she adds, "I should do something constructive." Over hot chocolate cups, Lucy opened up gradually. She shared her life with my parents with me. How? Grandpa moaned about the price of Lucy's school supplies, and Grandma often sighed when she had to prepare Lucy's meal. Even though they didn't physically harm her or deprive her of food, their animosity was evident in every exchange. The next week, I took a break from work to spend time with my niece. We went to the nearby library, had ice cream, and discussed everything and nothing. Despite all that had happened to her, Lucy was intelligent, kind, and incredibly strong. She showed me her artwork that never made it on the refrigerator, and her straight A report cards that no one had ever celebrated. Adopting her wasn't an easy decision. I meticulously constructed my life and career from the ground up. However, seeing Lucy attempt to become smaller, quieter, and less disruptive, just as I had done when she was my age, made the decision obvious. The court proceedings were draining. I spent months compiling my financial records, character references, and evidence of steady work. Jessica did not even attend the hearing, nor did she object to the loss of her parental rights. I eventually became Lucy's legal guardian following what seemed like an unending amount of paperwork and interviews. My parents hardly looked up from their TV show on the day we packed up her room at their house. Mom only told me to remember to provide her school records. In their new life together, Lucy thrived. She joined the debate team at school, met friends who came over for study sessions and movie nights, and decked out her room and our flat with bookcases and fairy lights. Sunday morning pancakes, nighttime strolls in the park, endless board game sessions, and monthly visits to Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George were highlights for us both as we established our own small routines. They showered Lucy with affection, remembering her favorite meals and proudly showcasing her artwork and report cards, paying attention to her stories with sincerity. It seemed like only a few short years had gone by. After turning 14, Lucy developed into a capable, kind adolescent who routinely made the honor roll. Lucy didn't seem to notice that my parents never phoned to see how she was doing, sent birthday cards, or inquired about her well-being. She had discovered her true kin. It was a Saturday morning when my folks called. With a curiously upbeat tone, she said, "We'd like you and Lucy to come visit, Mom. She is missed." Their abrupt involvement raised concerns after they had been silent for 5 years. However, I made the decision to go. I didn't want to be the one preventing Lucy from making her own decisions regarding her family ties. I realized why they had phoned as soon as we entered their front door. Sitting on the couch as if she had never left Lucy, Jessica was present. She erupted in tears and hurried over to my niece. "I've missed you terribly, sweetie." I closely examined Lucy's face. She stood still, her face displaying a range of emotions: longing, bewilderment, dread, and hope. As our parents watched with approval, Jessica embraced her with tears in her eyes. "I've evolved." Wiping her eyes, Jessica said, "I've come to understand what matters. I want my daughter back." The word "back" struck me hard. Like a borrowed sweater, Lucy. She had made up her mind to take it back. "Now I live in Phoenix," Jessica and Robert added. "We have a lovely home, and he does an excellent job." Lucy would adore that place. "Are you employed?" Keeping my voice low, I asked. Jessica paused her smile. "Robert makes enough money for all of us, but not at the moment." "And what if Robert doesn't end up working out?" I pushed. "What is your contingency plan?" "Why are you being so pessimistic?" Mom lost her temper. "Your sister is attempting to act morally. What's right?" I gave an astonished laugh. Not leaving her daughter for 5 years would have been the correct thing to do. Making phone calls, sending birthday cards, and demonstrating any kind of interest in Lucy's life would have been the proper course of action. Jessica screamed, "I made errors. However, she is my daughter." "Robin, you need to stop being so self-centered," Dad interrupted. "Your part is done. However, Lucy now needs her biological mother. If you really want to be a mother, you can have your own kids." I gazed at them in awe at their brutality. These individuals, who had failed not one but two children and had allowed Jessica's reckless behavior for decades, had never inquired about Lucy's academic progress or hobbies. They believed they could just restart the dysfunctional cycle. "You can't pass Lucy around like a toy." My voice trembled with rage as I spoke. "She needs stability and genuine affection, not just platitudes. When she experienced nightmares, where were you? When did she get sick? When the school spelling bee was won by her? Any of you, where were you? You're not entitled." Jessica let out a scream. "She is my kid. A kid you left behind. You left a kid with folks who didn't like her," and I shot her back. "A kid who was more deserving than you all." Lucy, who had been quiet during this conversation, abruptly took hold of my hand. "We're heading out." Squeezing her hand reassuringly, I declared. "And don't even bother to get in touch with us." Exactly 1 week after our altercation, Jessica called. I nearly didn't answer when I saw her phone number. However, I felt compelled to film the exchange. After years of working with challenging customers, I formed this habit. Her voice brimmed with phony warmth as she responded, "Hey, sis. After giving our predicament some thought, I believe I have a solution that would benefit everyone." "In what circumstance?" "Lucy, naturally. Look, I'm aware that you've developed feelings for her and that your fancy work pays well. Here's the thing then. I will not file a custody lawsuit if you give me $150,000. The phone almost fell out of my grasp. "Please pardon me. It's truly a win-win situation." As though she wasn't trying to sell her own child, Jessica went on in a nonchalant manner. "I receive enough money to start again, and you get to keep Lucy. You can use your pay to pay for it." "Let me clarify." My voice trembled as I spoke. "You are attempting to sell me your daughter." "Be less theatrical. I'm only being realistic. Do you want Lucy?" "I'm in need of cash." Straightforward commercial deal. "Jessica, she's not a second-hand automobile. She's your child." "All right." Her lovely tone vanished as she snapped. "Get what you want. You won't see her ever again, and I'll file a custody lawsuit." For practical purposes, how was that? After she hung up, I sat there feeling nauseous and gripping my phone. 3 days later, the complaint was filed. Jessica was recruited as a sophisticated family court lawyer by her new lover. The original petition portrayed me as a cunning aunt who had used a transitory circumstance in court, while Jessica was portrayed as a reformed mother who had overcome adversity to provide a stable home for her kid. Jessica did a fantastic job in her part. She informed the judge about her personal development and how she had found stability with her new partner while crying uncontrollably. "They had cut Lucy off from her," she said, "that I was demonstrating my superiority over my sister by utilizing her daughter." On her behalf, our parents testified that they had only requested me to babysit Lucy for a short time while Jessica recovered. Dad even implied that I was trying to turn Lucy against her mother by influencing her emotionally. As I watched them weave their web of deceit, I listened to their falsehoods. However, I was ready. "I would want to present an audio tape as evidence, Your Honor." As Jessica's words filled the courtroom, her face became pale. "I will not file a custody lawsuit if you give me $150,000. Do you want Lucy?" "I'm in need of cash." Straightforward commercial deal. The ensuing hush was deafening. Jessica's attorney stumbled and attempted to protest, but the harm was already done. For the first time, our parents remained still in their chairs, making no excuses to accommodate their ideal daughter. Then Lucy got to her feet. She seemed older and more certain than I had ever seen her at the age of 14. She stated rather simply, "I want to stay with Robin." My mom left me. I was selected by Robin. My true family is her. I saw Jessica's face fall apart not because of true sorrow, but rather because she realized she had no more power. Our parents were unable to look at anyone. Lucy too. At last, Lucy was able to rise beyond the shadow of her mother. The judge's ruling was prompt and clear. I was granted complete custody of Lucy, and Jessica was prohibited from communicating with her daughter at all. Her effort to sell custody was seen by the judge to be morally repugnant and a blatant sign of her incapacity to be a parent. As the decision was read, I saw Jessica sob in her chair. Without saying a word, her boyfriend, who had been seated in the rear of the courtroom, got up and left. He left her that same day, I later learned, because he was outraged by her effort to sell her own kid. In the courtroom parking lot, my parents attempted to apprehend us. Mom shouted out, "Please, Robin, this is something that our family can resolve." I gave them one final glance. Family? Neither of us has considered you family in years. What you did to me is not fair to Lucy. You allowed Jessica to do what to her? Where will Jessica go, though? Dad insisted. She was abandoned by Robert. There was no comedy in my laughter. Naturally. Are you still concerned about Jessica? Some things never change, even now. Jessica returned to her original residence with our parents. The golden kid continues to be pampered, forgiven, and fails to mature. This time, however, she had lost something priceless as a result of her mistakes. Life continued. With newfound vigor, Lucy threw herself into her studies as though the burden of doubt had finally been removed. She began taking photography classes, joined the school newspaper team, and expressed interest in pursuing a college degree in journalism. What's humorous, do you? One evening when we were preparing supper together, she stated, my mother's frequent departures caused me to believe for years that I was flawed. However, I now understood that she was the issue. The only person she ever knew how to love was herself. In awe of her knowledge, I gave her a firm hug. Kiddo, you are the strongest person I've ever met. Grandpa George and Grandma Eleanor continued to be our pillars of support. Their Sunday feasts became a revered custom. They preserved newspaper clippings of every item Lucy wrote for the school paper, boasted to their friends about her accomplishments, and proudly hung her photographs in their living room. One day, while we watched Lucy teach Grandpa George how to operate his new digital camera, Grandma Eleanor told me something that you two say to each other. In the same way that George and I attempted to save you, she was correct to strive to give Lucy the upbringing I was never able to have. I had finally discovered the family I had always desired. We chose it together, not the one I was born into. I still sometimes receive texts from my parents about Jessica's most recent drama, but I choose to ignore them. Lucy said she prefers it that way and hasn't spoken to her mother since the court battle. After burning, certain bridges ought to remain ashes. Lucy took first place in a student journalism competition held around the state last week. I reflected on the fearful 9-year-old child I had met years before and the self-assured adolescent she had grown into as I watched her get her prize. I considered cycles, brokenness, healed wounds, and unrestricted love. Story 3. My father, David, worked as a train driver, and my mother, Sarah, was an office secretary. They already had my brother, Michael, their pride and joy, who was 5 years old when Mom found out she was pregnant with me. She realized it late as I was already going within her. They didn't want another child. One was plenty. They advised we should get rid of it. I overheard Mom telling Dad one night when I was approximately 6, reciting this tale to him for what must have been the 100th time. But those darn doctors claimed it would be harmful for my health. We had no option. I was the sickly child, constantly battling one thing or another. Colds, flu, ear infections, you name it. Mom had to take so much time off work to be home with me that she finally lost her job. I recall the day she got fired. She came home, looked at me with such scorn and said, "Well, Amber, I hope you're happy now." The sole bright light in those early years was my grandma, the mother of my father. Grandma would enter our home like a pleasant wind, bearing soup and kisses, but Mom would hardly touch me while I was ill, even in my infectious state. She would embrace me and say, "Come here, my sweet girl," as Mom shook her head and watched from the doorway. "You'll have anything she has, Mom." Dad would caution. Grandma would only chuckle. She would kiss my forehead and say, "Love is the best medicine." The only reason we were able to survive those years was because of her financial assistance as well. Mom often reminded me of this and how big of a financial burden I was on the family. Michael was everything. I wasn't athletic, healthy, or our parents' favorite. I spent my days either at doctor's offices or in bed. He was making our parents proud by playing soccer and winning medals. While I moved food about my plate, they would meet him for dinner and chat about his day, his friends, and his dreams. Invisible. Then it was nearly magical. My health started to improve about the time I turned 8. My body seemed to have finally agreed to comply. No more frequent medical appointments, lost school days, or persistent sickness. Mom was able to return to work, but her career never fully returned to its previous level. After I survived my first month without getting sick, my mother finally exclaimed, "Perhaps now we can have some normalcy around here." However, I would discover that normalcy didn't imply what I had thought. It just meant that I was in good enough health to blend in with our family photo, a shadow behind my brother, the golden kid. In our household, Grandma continued to help Dad by making sure we had all we required. Her creation of educational funds for Michael and me, however, was what truly demonstrated her love for us. The secret to everything in life is education. When we spent weekends at Grandma's place, she would tell us. When she talked of our future, her eyes would light up. You can accomplish everything you set your mind to with the right knowledge. I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house because my parents wanted to spend time with Michael alone, not because they wanted me to develop a close relationship with her. I kept a toothbrush and pajamas at her house since it had become so habitual. "This weekend, your parents are taking Michael to his soccer competition," Grandma would say, attempting to hide her sorrow. "It's going to be a girls' weekend. Me and you alone." One Saturday in particular, I was at her place watching TV. Michael's basketball game went into overtime, so Mom called to let me know they would be late to pick me up. They prevailed. Grandma hung up the phone and said, "The winning points were scored by your brother." "Nice," I muttered. Hearing about Michael's accomplishments is nothing new to him. "What do you want to do, my love?" Grandma sat next to me and asked. "You never discuss your hobbies." I finally broke down and informed her about the ice skating lessons at that point. I had been pleading with my parents to let me to take. After seeing the mall's ice rink, I couldn't get the idea of sliding across its sleek, glossy surface out of my head. They can't afford it, according to Mom. They just paid for Michael's new basketball shoes and soccer kit last week, I reasoned, tugging at a loose thread on my sleeve. I finally plucked up the guts to inquire about singing lessons a few days later. The teacher thought I had a beautiful voice in the school chorus. "We used up all of our spare cash on your brother's hobbies, honey," Mom remarked, not even raising her head from her phone. "In athletics, he is truly displaying promise. We must make investments for his future." Grandma, however, established school money for us both, I argued. "Is there any of it we could use?" Dad intervened, then spoke firmly. "It's college money. Amber, for his college applications, Michael needs to complete these tasks. You know that, don't you?" I didn't comprehend. To be honest, I didn't understand why Michael was allowed to try everything. Soccer, basketball, swimming, keep track. I didn't understand why they attended every one of his games while I was sitting on the sidelines, but they never inquired about what I would like to do. I couldn't figure out why he was so unique and me so forgettable, because I was there first. Throughout elementary and middle school, the trend persisted. Michael always prevailed when it came to choose between his hobbies and whatever I wanted to do. While I completed my schoolwork by myself at Grandma's house, they would sit in the bleachers and support him during his sports, sharing happy parent moments on social media. When Michael was admitted to the next state's priciest university, our parents were quite proud. There was no issue about money. They would find a way. After all, this was the future of their son, they claimed. We were discussing. Having such a bright youngster is such a blessing. At a send-off party, Mom cried, "He's going to do incredible feats." I was standing with a platter of cake in the corner. I had no desire to eat, observing their admiration for him. While Mom shot pictures for Facebook, Dad put his arm over Michael's shoulders and they were both smiling. The weekend visits followed. The clockwork is every other Saturday. To see him, they would gather their belongings and make the 6-hour journey. Since I was never invited, I would spend my weekends at my grandmother's house, browsing through my phone and following their weekend activities on social media. One picture after another. Video after video. Michael, Mom, and Dad at football games and restaurants. Together, we explored the city. They appeared very content and joyful. An ideal three-person household. What stung the most were the captions. Enjoy the weekend with our excitement and pride. The greatest son ever. With the love of our life, creating memories. Our only hope for the future is family time. I finally had enough of this after months of it. They were getting ready to see Michael for another weekend. When I went up against them, "You act as though I don't exist, but why?" My voice trembled as I asked. "I was never brought up in any of your posts. You never bring me along. It's similar. You wish I weren't here, for example." Mom hardly raised her head from her bag. "Once more, there you go, constantly whining. I have no complaints. You ought to be thankful that you are here at all." With a strong voice, she interrupted me. "What did you overlook?" Abortion was what I wanted. I felt like I was slapped by the words. As if Mom hadn't just said something really hurtful to their daughter, Dad stood there looking at his phone. It finally clicked at that point. I had been looking for a more profound explanation for their treatment of me for all these years. Perhaps they were under financial difficulties. Perhaps having 2 children overwhelmed them. Perhaps they simply didn't know how to love their kids equally. It was a lot easier than that, though. They simply disliked me. I wasn't wanted by them. They didn't. And they wouldn't. They were obliged to have me as a child, the person who destroyed their idyllic 3-person family. The error they had to endure, watching them prepare for another weekend with their lone child while standing in our living room. Since that's how they perceived it, something broke inside of me, but it wasn't the devastating pain I had anticipated. Rather, it seemed like a chain breaking, releasing me from the intense desire to gain their affection. The celebration of Michael's 20th birthday was rather elaborate. Like everything else in his life, his parents made plans to bring his closest high school pals with them when they drove to his college town. They organized a massive surprise party and booked out a whole restaurant. "Will you spend the weekend at your grandmother's house?" Without even feigning a question, Mom told me, "We'll be too busy planning the celebration." Through the Instagram live stream, I witnessed the entire event. Mom was making sure to document every moment on social media, as she always does. Michael entered the restaurant with a startled expression on his face, his college friends' applause, and his father's heartfelt speech about his only child made him proud every single day. This time, though, something was different. I watched it all on my phone while lounging on Grandma's couch. My chest no longer ached in the same way. "Do you want me to switch it off?" Grandma saw me observing the water and inquired. To our surprise, I said, "No. Actually, I'm all right." I was somewhere in the line, too. Acceptance had numbed the sting of forgetting. Grandma was still with me, and she taught me the true meaning of love. Social media posts were not necessary for her to demonstrate her concern for me. She simply did. When I was 17 years old, 2 years later, Michael broke the huge news and graduated from college. He was getting married. His future spouse, Patricia, 35, has 2 children of her own and was divorced. In addition, she was loaded. "Do you think we're lucky?" The night Michael brought Patricia around, Mom shrieked at supper. "Our kid has discovered an amazing, well-established woman." As her 2 kids played on pricey iPads, Patricia, who was clad in fine clothing and jewelry, sat at our dining table. Michael gave her the impression that he had won the jackpot, which our parents believed he had. Dad said, "We're going to have the most amazing wedding for you. I'm already using this phone to pull up coins. We wish our kid and his new family the very best." Every day, the plans became more elaborate. Upscale location, fine dining catering, ice sculptures and live music. The expenses continued to increase. I finally voiced the subject that had been bothering me one evening after listening to them talk about bringing in a well-known chef for the wedding. "From whence do you acquire all of this money?" At supper, I inquired. "This must be really expensive." Mom and Dad exchanged a glance that was difficult to interpret. Mom waved a hand dismissively, as if to ward off a bothersome fly, and added, "That's none of your concern, Amber." Making a positive impression on Patricia is crucial. This wedding must be flawless. I glanced at my dish below. I'm experiencing that old, familiar sensation of alienation from my own family once more. However, there was also something else this time, a persistent feeling that they had something to conceal. Well, that came as a shock. Mom called while I was in the middle of studying for a test. She told me that her father had been in a rail accident, her voice trembling. In spite of everything, I felt sick. My father was still him. When I got there, the hospital hallways were unnaturally silent. I had no trouble finding Dad's room. Mom was hovering at his bedside already. Dad was up. His face was injured, but not too badly, propped up against white cushions. His thumb was restlessly scrolling on his phone screen as his eyes were riveted on it. "Hello, Father," I said quietly. He hardly looked up. "Has Michael given you a call?" He questioned his mother, utterly disregarding me. "Not just yet, honey," Mom answered. "He will, I'm sure." I felt uncomfortable and like an outsider as I stood there. The quiet between us was broken by the cardiac monitor's steady beep. Mom finally turned to face me, her expression contorted with anxiety. "Not for the health of Dad. I would soon find out, but for a very different reason." "Your father erred?" she remarked plainly. "He broke certain safety rules at work, and the company won't pay for his medical bills or give him any money back." Dad continued to stare at his phone while shifting uneasily in bed. Mom went on, "We earned money for his treatment." "A substantial sum of money," I blurted without thinking. "How about my schooling fund?" Grandma put up one. "That might be helpful." "It doesn't bother me. College is not as crucial as Dad's health." I anticipated being thanked, or at the very least, having my offer acknowledged. Mom, instead, gave me a sour laugh that made me wince. She shook her head and murmured, "Oh, Amber, it's long since gone. For Michael's wedding, we made use of it." Making an impression on Patricia's family was our goal. The words struck me like a punch to the body. I stood there attempting to take in what I was listening to. They had used the money from my college fund to pay for Michael's wedding. "You must now find employment following graduation," Mom said. "Get a loan. You must contribute to the cost of this treatment for your father." I was looking at my parents while the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. In that antiseptic hospital room, surrounded by the disappointment and disinfectant odor, these were the people who were meant to love and protect me. At last, I realized how completely they had betrayed me. "How would you pay for my schooling?" "Cash?" I insisted. "Even if you weren't there to spend time in the hospital?" I raised my voice. "It was given to you by Grandma especially for my future." This time, I didn't back down. Instead, I maintained my ground, and Mom's expression hardened into that old look of contempt I'd seen so many times before. "You don't have the authority to ask us questions," she spat. "Not a single one. You ought to be thankful that you are still here to ask questions. Or have you lost sight of my desire to abort you?" Like poison, the words lingered in the air. This time was different from the many times I'd heard them use my near abortion against me. They had passed an uncrossable line this time. I dashed past the nursing station, through the automated doors, down the antiseptic hallways, and into the parking lot. I could hardly take my phone out of my pocket since my hands were trembling so much. I was crying, but I was able to call Grandma. "My dear." Through the speaker, her pleasant voice could be heard. "What's the matter?" In a hurry, everything poured out. The mishap. Dad's care. My schooling finance was taken. Mom's harsh remarks. My voice kept cracking as I talked. Grandma, however, patiently heard everything. There was a pause when I was done, and then she spoke in a steely, determined voice I had never heard before. With firmness, she continued, "Pack your things, each and every one. Right now, you're going to live with me." I really regret not stepping in sooner. In a trance, I hauled out my luggage and began packing everything I owned, including books, clothes, and the few priceless memories I had accumulated over the years. The front door slammed as I was halfway through emptying my drawer. "What are you doing, in your opinion?" Mom's voice was like a dagger piercing the room. I continued packing. "I'm going. I'll be living with my grandmother," she responded. "Oh, no, you're not," as she moved in front of my luggage. "At the hospital, your father needs someone to look after him. I'm worn out from it all." "You must take charge and fulfill your responsibility." Even I was astonished by the empty, harsh sound I left behind. My contribution. "Your adorable golden child is Michael. Why isn't he present? Assisting?" Now, where is your ideal son? For the first time, I noticed something other than fury in Mom's eyes, and her face crumpled a little. Fear? Michael. He is currently unable to assist. She lowered herself into my bed and confessed. Patricia is not doing well. He receives no money from her. She simply did. At events, she just flaunts him as though he were a trophy spouse. And now, she inhaled nervously. She is now threatening to expel him. There is nowhere else for him to go. Until he gets employment, he will have to return home. A job? I couldn't resist laughing. In his whole life, Michael has never worked. How much time do you estimate it will take? That's why we need you, Mom, she added, adopting that deceptive tone of voice. I was really familiar. Your dad needs medical attention right now. We are eager for Michael to secure employment. We need your assistance. Finally, I closed up my suitcase. No, I'm finished. My schooling finance was stolen by you. All my life, you have treated me like trash. I will not borrow money to correct your errors. I will not sacrifice my life to care for a parent who never showed any interest in me. I'm finished. You can't watch me, Amber. I picked up my bags, passed her still form, and made my way to the door at the threshold. I made one final spin around. Consider seeking assistance from your only kid. He'll find a solution, I'm sure. Grandma's place was a whirlwind of a drive, but I felt lighter every mile. I started weeping once more as soon as I turned into her driveway. However, these were tears of relief this time. My mother transformed my leaving into a social media spectacle in less than 3 days. After years of pretending I didn't exist, the same Facebook account suddenly became obsessed with me. Heartbroken, she started her first post. In our hour of need, our youngest daughter has deserted us. She refuses to assist her own parents as my spouse lies in a hospital bed. She has fled to live with her grandma instead. How did we bring up a child that was so self-centered? The comments came flooding in right away. Friends and family who lived far away and had only witnessed the meticulously manicured portrayal of our family. Life were ready to criticize me. Subsequently, the voices of those who had witnessed the truth throughout the years emerged. Emma, my cousin, made a remark. Will you tell everyone that you disregarded her for years? Or ought I too? Rachel added. Maya, it's funny that you didn't bring up Amber in your posts until you required her assistance. Next followed my Aunt Lisa's roles as a family law lawyer, mother, and sister. Her remarks were quite significant. Sarah, you are publicly disparaging your little kid by disregarding my private messages. Thus, I must issue a warning. Amber is 17 years old. You are still legally in charge of her care and welfare. Child Protective Services may take notice of the fact that she felt forced to leave home and that you are now launching a social media campaign against her. Do you want it that way? Because if people look into it, they'll discover much more than these Facebook postings. I promise. After that, Mom removed her first post, but she wasn't finished. The following morning, she stormed into Grandma's house without knocking. Mom. She spoke to Grandma, utterly disregarding me. Amber needs to hear some common sense from you. It's time for this small revolt to end. Grandma took her coffee cup slowly and purposefully. She had never looked so serious to me. Rebellion, she muttered. When a youngster finally resists years of abuse, is that what you call it? Abuse? Mom laughed. We did everything we could for her. All of it? Grandma's voice lifted a bit. You gave Michael everything. You paid for his wedding using funds from Amber's education fund, which I had set away especially for her future. A wedding that just served as a spectacle to win over a woman who is now threatening to divorce him. We had to. You have to consider the future of both of your children, Grandma interrupted her. Rather, you spent money as if it were your last day. Well, isn't tomorrow already here? And no, I will not cover David's medical expenses. Mom was crying as she went, but it wasn't regret. They were tears of frustration at the failure of her deception. The door behind her slammed. A month after I left, Grandma leaned over and squeezed my hand. In order to pay for Dad's medical bills, my parents had to sell our house. They relocated to a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less coveted area of the city. After, Michael arrived at their house. At last, Patricia had had enough of his entitled, slothful ways. She had evicted him with just his high-end clothing and the pricey watch she had purchased for their wedding. He expected to be treated like a king or queen when he got to our parents' new apartment. They first made an effort to keep the illusion going. According to family rumors, Dad was making excuses for Michael's delayed employment, while Mom was still preparing his favorite meals. Reality, however, has a way of getting through even the most adamant denial. Have you heard? Over breakfast one morning, Grandma informed me. At last, your mother informed Michael that he needed to find employment. He said that because they had never prepared him for the real world, they owed him a luxurious existence. They got into a heated argument over it. I was creating my own life in the meantime. I received decent marks when I graduated from high school. My parents didn't notice. Grandma also assisted me in enrolling in the accounting program at the nearby community college. Although it wasn't the esteemed university I had previously envisioned, it was a good education that would pave the way for a secure profession. Even a tiny accounting business downtown offered me an internship. The experience was priceless, but the remuneration was little. My attention to detail, which my parents had always disregarded as being overly meticulous, was really valued by my supervisor, Miss S. Chen. In unexpected ways, living with Grandma was mending me. We settled into a cozy breakfast pattern where we would discuss our days before I left for work or school in the evening. She genuinely paid attention to what I had to say, inquired about my life, and acknowledged my little triumphs. Then one day she requested me to go to her lawyer's office with her. I just need to update a few documents. Casually, she said. I tried not to fidget as I sat in the classy office. Mr. Peterson, her attorney, produced a paper. My will is being updated. Grandma made a statement. I want to confirm that everything is set up correctly. When Mr. Peterson started reading, my heart stopped. Grandma left me the property, her finances, and even her treasured antique jewelry collection. Everything. Are you certain? When we exited the office, I muttered. How about Michael and Dad? My hand was taken by Grandma. You've had enough of your brother and father. I will not allow them to accept any more. I'm preserving your future right now. I fought back tears as I gave her a firm hug. I'll keep my vow to them a secret. Excellent. She grinned. For once, let them make their own decisions about their future. I was lying in bed in what had become my room that night. Really? My chamber. I considered how life had changed, and it wasn't just a room I occupied in someone else's home. In their little flat, Michael and my parents were having financial and blame-related arguments. Mom had completely ceased using social media. Dad had returned to work, although in a desk position. And me? I was doing well. My granny cherished me. I was creating a future for myself. And I felt really desired for the first time in my life. It's not always the case that the family you were born into is the one you should remain with. Walking away and creating something new and better is sometimes the wisest course of action.